Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Brittnee Smith podcast. I'm your host, Brittnee N. Smith, and I am so hyped. I'm so hyped because today we are embarking on a journey together. It is a strong friend summer. Hashtag strong friend summer. And for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time and you've never seen me on social, you may not know what that is. Basically, what I want to do is redefine what it means to be the strong friend. I posted on social, I'm like, where are all my strong friends at? And then like a couple people were like, we don't want to be called that. I don't want to be strong. And I'm like, oh, snap. I was taken aback by those responses. And it's because the strong friend is somebody who's typically always tired. They're typically the one always pouring and never being poured into. And it's not, when you put it like that, it's not an existence that you strive for, right? And so I want to speak to those women who find themselves in the strong friend spot and helping us redefine what that looks like. I want us to be strong in the Lord. I want us to be a friend of God. And I also want to create community for those of us who are like minded in that sense. We're responsible for other people. We care deeply about other people and we serve and give until it's our last. And so I want to create space for us this summer. And so you'll find on this season of the podcast that the guests that I bring on, they're not just no plain Jane. All right. They are strong friends in their own right. They are supporters of other women. Some of them are supporters of me directly in my life. And I want us to come together and have a conversation around this concept of the strong friend and be encouraged along the way. So, without further ado, today I have the beautiful, illustrious Ashlee Record of Ashlee Record Enterprises. She is a coach, a speaker, an author, a YouTuber, a mama, a wife. She's in ministry. She's doing all the things and she's doing it well. And today we're going to talk about the power of the strong friend through her story. So Ashlee, listen, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. And come on, intro. Like that was so good.
Yay. Yay. So you guys know, Ashlee and I don't know each other super well, but we've become Facebook friends, like the real kind, like the kind that check on each other in the inbox, like, hey, just checking in, and I love when that happens organically, because there's a connection. There's a connection. And so, Ashlee, I want you to first start out by telling us who you are through your business. What do you do? Who do you help? What's your mission?
Absolutely. So I love to start with the last part, the mission. So my mission is to equip Christian women who have been assigned by God to impact millions in the marketplace with the strategy, the clarity, and the character to fulfill their assignment. So I work as a Christian business strategist. My clients are coaches, consultants, they are financial advisors, graphic designers, and all together they have the same assignment to go forth and dominate their industry. And they just need the clarity, they just need the instruction, they just need the direction on how to do that well. And that's why they hire me.
Awesome, 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 awesome. And so first, I love the fact that your faith is up front in your business. I know that many of us, as we entered the entrepreneur space, struggled with that. If we're honest, it was like, okay, I want to be a business owner, I want to be taken seriously, but I'm a Christian. Should I say I'm a Christian, or should I just be a business owner that happens to be Christian, or a Christian who happens to be a business owner? Like all the things. And so, talk about. Well, let me ask it to you this way: was that something that was ever a challenge for you, or a question mark for you, as you started your business? And if not, what was the instruction when you first got started?
That's a great question. So when I first got started, first of all, I didn't even aspire to be a coach or anything. I didn't know anything about coaching. I started out just hosting workshops. Back in 2018, God gave me an idea to host these workshops, helping Christian women and men accomplish their goals. And so I was like, okay, Father, let's do it. So like I went and put together the event, and just kind of organically from the event, it turned into an annual thing and the women who attended the event wanted me to work with them as a coach. And they said, you know, you're helping me accomplish my God-given goals. You should consider being a life coach. And I was like, what is a life coach? So I looked into it and I said, okay. And it just made sense to me to be a Christian lifestyle coach because I was showing Christian women how to really like live in their purpose. Like God has given you an assignment. And so you need to have a plan in place in order for you to fulfill that assignment. There were some times, especially when I did mindset coaching for a season, where different advisors, people who were massively successful in business, they said, where you're going, you're not going to be able to go as a Christian mindset coach. That's actually limiting your impacts and your capacity to be successful in business with that title. But every time I went before God in prayer, it was like I said, this is who you are. Like I said, this is what you're called to do. And now where I am as a Christian business strategist, it makes so much sense for me to fulfill the space in this capacity because there are not a lot of people who specifically and intentionally equip Christians using Christian principles as a Christian. Like there are a lot of people who are perverting the things of God. And so I think it is important, if that's your assignment from God, to stand in that, own your authority in the marketplace. And for me, that looks like being a Christian business strategist.
I love it. I love it. We have to be bold, right? We have to be bold. And I love the fact that you consult with God in
Amen.
in the process, right? Like, and so I think many of us, I'm speaking for myself, but I know I represent at least half of us out there, that we kind of did it in the reverse, right? We kind of jumped out there, started doing the things, and it's like I'm stuck, and then we're like, okay, let me pray, and then you go and pray. God says something, but you're not quite sure, so you just keep doing what you were doing based on what you think is right, based on what the people around you say you should be doing, and you lose a lot of time or waste a lot of time kind of on that hamster wheel. And so it's refreshing to hear and see someone who you were determined from the beginning to follow God's plan and his purpose. So I love that. So then talk to me about because and I also love how you kind of I don't say fell into what you're doing, but literally kind of just followed the breadcrumbs. So who were you before you figured out that you're Ashlee Record Enterprises? Who were you before and how did that lead into like what clues were left in your life prior to figuring out who you're supposed to be?
Great question. So before I was doing what I do now, I was wholeheartedly on a path to be a teacher. And even before I was on a path to be a teacher, I was heading into being an attorney. So from
Oh,
being
wow.
an attorney, yeah, I was like I had consulted with a law firm. I was preparing for the LSAT, all the things. And I think somewhere along the line, I just kind of realized I don't think practicing law is going to be great for me. Specifically, I wanted to do criminal law. And I don't know if I talked to an attorney or somebody, but somebody told me that as like a criminal defense attorney, there's going to come a point where I will have to defend people who are guilty and I'll know that they're guilty and I'll have to like advocate for them and use the law to their benefit. And my integrity is just like, oh, okay, that's not the path for me. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and so let me just stick to my original plan and use this English degree to get into somebody's classroom. And so in 2018, I was still pursuing my desire to be a teacher while also following God's instruction to host these workshops. So I did end up becoming a teacher later on in 2018. I started off with seventh grade. And then, like I said, the workshop just organically turned into an annual event just from the women asking, like, we have to do this again. I've never had anybody break down goal setting like this. I've never had anybody like the way you strategically, show us how to move forward and make progress. I've made more progress in these hours with you than I have in the last couple of years. Like the breakthroughs that they had made me turn it into something that I kept doing. And then when they asked me to coach them, I started coaching, but I was still 100% committed to teaching. So 2019, I became a teacher at a high school, which was my ultimate goal. and I loved it. I worked with all boys. It was a school for Black boys in Chicago. So most of my
Wow.
students, like 98%, were African American, and then a couple of them were Hispanic. And it was just an amazing to be a Black woman teaching Black boys like who look like my kids, who look like
Yeah.
my mother, and to be able to empower them. And we had so much freedom in the classroom to be able to, like, we had to stick to, of course, the Common Core standards, but we had freedom around the curriculum, the conversations that we had in our English literature class. Like, it was amazing. So in my mind, I was just going to be doing like workshops and coaching things during the summer, during winter break. I had no intention of pursuing this full time until 2021, when God basically said, like, you're done with the classroom. Like, it's time for you to be in the marketplace full time, which sounded crazy because I didn't have any clients. And so I had to make a decision, like, am I going to continue to follow God into what essentially to me feels like the wilderness, or am I going to stay where I have the consistent income, I have the safety of knowing, like, I'm welcome here, I love my principal loves me, I love the school staff, and I'm out of obedience, right? So I had to decide, and I chose to go into the wilderness and just follow God through the journey in entrepreneurship full time. And so that's kind of how I followed him the whole way through. I ended up investing in a coach who helped me figure out why I didn't have clients and start to get clients. And I've just been rolling with God every step of the way since then.
That's amazing. I want to talk about the tension of, okay, God gave me this word.
Mm,
It don't make no sense, Lord. And this over here, I know. This over here is safe. This over here, it's clear, it's understandable, it's sure.
yeah.
This over here is uncertain. So talk about that process for you. Like, was it, in the Bible when Abraham was getting ready to take Isaac up the mountain, God said, Abraham sacrificed your son, and the next day Abraham got up. Like, was it like that? Or was it like God said, Ashley, you need to go, and then like 8 months later, you're like, here I am, Lord. Talk about that process for you.
Absolutely. I feel like it was probably more like the latter than the former because there was a lot of, back and forth, just trying to figure it out. At the same time, we were also deciding on whether or not we were going to move from Illinois to Georgia, which of course meant I would leave, the school that I love, the students that I loved. And even that was a tough decision. But again, I felt like we were being called. My husband was like, we love it there. We had visited Georgia one time and a couple months prior, and we just really enjoyed it. So we were like, maybe, this is what we're supposed to do. Meanwhile, every door in Illinois was closing as far as like looking for houses. Like, we had houses that we loved, and then go see it, and the neighborhood wasn't right, or our application wasn't even approved, like wasn't even reviewed, let alone approved. Like, they just had so many applicants that they weren't even looking at our application. So we're like, if every door in Illinois is closing, we know that we need to move because we needed more space. And Georgia seems to be the only opportunity. Like, all roads kind of point to this big shift. So
Right.
maybe we just need to make it. And it really, my husband played a huge, huge, huge role in my choice. My mom, she also played a huge role. I think in every pivotal moment of my life, I always have different people in my inner circle who stand on faith. And that allows me to, that kind of like empowers me. I've never been in a moment where I had to like go against everybody, right? Like, my mama doesn't believe, my husband doesn't believe. It's always at least one or two people in my inner circle who believe. And that really helps me kind of stand in my faith too and take the leap.
Yeah. So how important is it, right? Because if we're speaking to the strong friends, how important is your circle?
Oh my gosh. Like, my friends were the ones back in 2018 who told me to start coaching. Like, they were the ones who said, not only should you be a coach, but like, I'm going to pay you to coach me. Like, when I first started preaching the word of God, ministering the word of God back in 2014, they were there. Like, they spread the word, they encouraged me. Like, I cannot imagine where I would be without the women that God has allowed me to be connected with all these years. Especially for us, we moved a lot growing up. My mom and I, before I had my siblings, and it was like every year it was a new place, every year a different place. And so when we finally got back to Chicago, because that's where I was born, and we settled there, and I was able to like build lasting relationships, it just meant so much more than, sometimes friendships do to others. Because for me, it was like I never had an opportunity to know the same person for multiple years. Like my best friend
Right.
and I, we've been friends since 2003. So it's like I've known her forever. And so
Yeah,
I'm grateful for the inner circle for sure.
absolutely. And so I want to tap into the question of what are some of well, let me back up. What is your definition of the strong friend?
The strong friend is the friend who everyone calls on, the one who isn't supposed to like fall apart, the one who's supposed to have it together, the one who's supposed to always know what to say and when to say it and have a solution or at least be available, even if it's literally just to listen. Everyone, especially if you have like a big friend circle, everyone in the friend circle usually leans on the strong friend because they're the ones who's supposed to be like the most resilient and be able to withstand all of the pressures of life. Like if you can't figure it out, oh, it can't be figured out because you always can figure it out. So
Right, right. And how do you find, well, one, do you identify with that definition? Well, yeah, let me ask you that question first. Do you identify with that definition as being the strong friend or a strong friend?
I will say I feel like I am a strong friend amongst strong friends,
Mhm.
where it's like we all lean on each other. So I have
Right,
like my circle of friends from college and then my circle of friends from high school. And I'm grateful that we are able to have a mutually beneficial relationship where like I remember when I got crazy news from my doctor the first time and I called my best friend. She was at work, first of all. And I was just in tears, like a hot mess. Like as soon as she said hello, I'm just, oh, and she's like, what's going on? And like just to be able to listen and support me, like so I'm grateful that it's not a one-sided relationship in any of my friendships. Like we're all there for each other.
do you find, I mean, I know you just kind of gave some backstory as to how your friendships came about,
Mm.
but did you ever find yourself in a season where it wasn't reciprocal? Where you had certain friends that all they did was lean, 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 no matter what. Like,
Yeah.
and how did you transition out of those relationships or dissolve those relationships?
Absolutely. So I had a friend who I said I was like every time she talks to me, it's always like a violin concert where like every conversation is a woe is me, is a, this situation is terrible. And I am totally open to being there for you through your struggles as long
Right,
as you are totally open to like moving through them, right? Like it's one thing to invite someone into, overwhelm, into frustration and say, how can I get out? Or can you just listen to me as I work my way through this? It's another thing for every single conversation to be another problem and you are not open or receptive to solutions. So I
right,
basically just had to kind of had to have the conversation and say, like, I love you and I love you so much that I cannot be like almost like an enabler or like allow you to stop yourself from getting the healing that you need by constantly wallowing in your despair. Like if
right.
you decide that you're ready to shift, if you decide that you're ready to kind of end this violin concert and get into, your next space, then I will absolutely be there. But I can't continue to just sit here while you repeat the cycle again and again and again.
Absolutely. And I can feel the strong friends going, yeah. And so, circling back around to what you do for your clients, right? I kind of want to talk about how you help them shift their narrative because I feel like a part of our response to those friends who might be draining, or those friends who are not serving us, or even just situations that are not serving us, but we end up staying in them for whatever reason, that it has something to do with our narrative that we're playing back to ourselves. So talk a little bit about that and how we can shift that narrative for better.
Absolutely. I think honestly, it comes from your relationship with God. When you are clear on like what God says and what God's will is, it makes it a lot easier for you to have like that firm foundation and also kind of like that floor where it's like, I'm not willing to go any lower than this because like this is the minimum for me as far as like what God says. Like when you look at the word of God, you don't see anything where it's like sit in a pit of despair and just wallow in that thing, right?
Right.
Like grief is natural. Things are going to overwhelm you. Sometimes you might even get anxious, but you can't live in that place. And so I think that once you get confident and clear on what God says and what his will is for your life, how God sees you, how God sees the people around you, it makes it so much easier for you to love them, but to also love them enough to say, like, I'm not going to be a part of this, constant cycle of chaos and confusion. At some point, you got to come on out. And so, like, maybe you need a therapist or maybe you need some other outside support. But as far as me and our friendship, I'm here for you. Just I can't be in that capacity.
Absolutely. You have to know what you can handle, both for yourself and for those that are connected to you. So I kind of want to throw not a monkey wrench, but because, like I said, this phase is I want to be able to also encourage and empower you, right? So I want you to tell me what makes you an amazing friend.
Oh, I love that. Honestly, I always say, if I could be completely honest, I always say that God gave me like the best friends in the world. Like, I just look at who they are, and anytime I tell them, like, you are such a good friend, like, how did I get blessed to have you? Especially, like I said, being someone who didn't grow up with the types of relationships, like, they're used to, what's new for me because like they've had, friendships that they were in kindergarten, friendships that they were in second grade. But for me, it's like, girl, I didn't start having real friendships since I was like 13. So
Right.
honestly, like I feel like what makes me an amazing friend is literally being a reflection of my friends. Like trying to love them the way that, the word talks about, trying to be there for them, check on them, encourage them, sometimes even like kind of shifting their perspective, guiding them, sometimes kind of helping them see things that they don't see. I think too, something that really makes me an amazing friend when it comes to how my friends are with me is like we're honest with each other. Like if you are going down the wrong path, we don't just sit there and say, yes, girl, let's go. We're like, that's not it. Like that doesn't even today I had a conversation with one of my closest friends and she was kind of telling me about an overwhelming situation. I just kind of told her like where you are right now, what you're talking about is ahead of today. Like the Bible says like focus on today because tomorrow got its own stuff. So like what can you handle today? What can you do today? And so I think sometimes we find ourselves, especially when you really love somebody who's your friend, where you just don't say anything and you think you're doing them a favor because maybe they wouldn't be receptive to the correction or they wouldn't be receptive to the thing that's kind of contrary to what they're thinking. But I think a good friend is someone who's honest and someone who's willing to let you know, like if you're making a mistake or if they see a better way. And so that's one of the things that I really value in my friendships.
That's awesome. 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 All right. So we're gonna land the plane here. I want you to tell the people what your message is, for those who are listening who don't have those friendships, who don't feel like they have a story, that they don't feel like they have anything, right? But they find themselves always giving, 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 pouring, 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 and they feel depleted. What do you say to that strong friend who's not feeling very strong today?
Hmm. I say, girl, I love you. Listen. And I also say, like, you cannot pour from an empty cup. I say that all the time. So you have to get connected with people who will love you the way that you so freely love other people. I think that sometimes when we find ourselves in a certain position where it seems like we're the only one, the enemy loves to isolate us. And so you start to think, well, there's nobody else. I'm the only one. It's just me. And it's like, no, there is so many people. There are so many people in the world who would love to love on you, who would love to be there for you when you're falling apart, who would love to encourage you and pray with you the same way you do for others. And so ask God to help you find those people. Brittnee even talked about her community, like get connected and when you do get connected, be willing to be the one who's getting filled up. I think sometimes too, because you are the strong friend, you automatically snap into the gear of, what can I do for you? How can I serve you? How can I help you? But go into the relationship and just get to know the person and see if there's an opportunity for you to be the one on the receiving end. I think too, sometimes with strong friends, we tend to say no a lot. Like, do you have any questions or can I help you with anything or do you need? And it's like, no, I'm okay. When really you're falling apart. So I think a part of the process too with making those better relationships is being honest. If you need some help, say you need some help. If you're not okay, say you're not okay. If you need someone to just listen and you don't want any advice, then say, yes, I need a listening ear. Be willing to ask for what you need and to
Right.
answer truthfully when someone offers.
So good. So, so good. Because I agree with you 1000% that most of us, when we get in that place where we feel like we don't have anybody, we don't have no support, we don't, oftentimes there is at least a person who is like, I'm available, me, pick me, and we're like, no, there's no one. And part of it's because we don't want to be disappointed. We don't want to be let down. We don't want to be taken advantage of. We don't want to be seen as weak. Time out for all of that. Okay. I need help. I need because I'd rather get the help I need so that the suffering can last a lot shorter than if I didn't get help. Um, it's something that we do. So I agree with you 1000%. So Ashlee, tell us how we can find you, how we can connect with you. Tell us about your event coming up.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I am on Facebook. I am on YouTube. I am on Instagram, not as often, but I am on Instagram and LinkedIn. And how you can connect with me. So Brittnee did mention I have an event happening here in Georgia in November, the Assigned Experience. It is for the high-level Christian woman in business who's currently either at or very close to six figures in her business and she's looking for strategies to accelerate her progress in partnership with God. It is very much so not a conference, but more of a basic training, almost like a boot camp style, where we're coming together to worship and then we are also going to be working. So, learning from top industry experts the biblical principles for business success and then implementing those biblical principles in the room because so many times we come together and we get empowered and we get fired up and we learn all these great things. And then you go back home and you got to be a wife, you got to be a mother, you have to just be a woman. And before you know it, it's a year later and you've done nothing with the new information. So the mission, the assignment for the assigned experience is to equip you with not only the environment that puts a demand on your assignment, but also with access to implement in the room and get guidance and support while you're implementing in a community of other phenomenal Christian women in business.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Listen, you need to get there. Okay. You have time. By the time this episode airs, you still have a couple of months to get it together. Okay. And is there a cap on how many people? Because I feel like
It
spaces are going to fill
is.
up.
Yes, I have 24 spaces remaining
Ooh,
for the assigned experience.
that's not a lot of space.
Yes,
Well, I'm just going to believe God that by the time I'm ready,
come
either
on.
there'll be space left or you will have had to expand it because
Yes.
so many people signing up. But Ashlee, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
taking this time with me today. Like I said, I admire you. I'll be over here fangirling on social media, like, look at her. Look
Thanks.
at that flyer. Look at you, girl. You better go ahead. I'll be over here like geeking out. So I truly do
Thank
appreciate you
you.
taking the time and continue to be the strong friend in Christ. And we're gonna connect even more. We're gonna connect even more. So ladies, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Brittnee N. Smith of the Brittnee Smith Podcast, and I will see you next week for another episode. Have a good one. Bye.